Welcome, dear audience, to This Week in Clown World, the video series dedicated to reliving the events of the simulation, because yes, it really happened, and no, we weren't dreaming. Well, it's been a week of fire and fury across Europe, as while the soy-infested socialists continue to read softly into the background after J.D. Vance's speech a few weeks back, when he brought the Eagle of Freedom to Munich, and then blasted the entire continent for systematically eroding the freedoms of the people, and then putting them in serious danger through mass unvetted immigration from countries where a casual Sunday is actively blowing each other up, when it turned out he was entirely right, and that faux outrage and crying was because he was merely pointing out exactly what was happening. And what better example to give than the failed state also known as the Soviet Kingdom. Now, some of you may remember a few weeks back when the UK government, as traditional commies, decided they'll bring the final erosions of civil liberty by demanding that Apple provides them the backdoor access to their entire encryption service. And if Apple were to agree to the Soviets, then they would have access to the entire world's Apple users' encrypted data. Well, they didn't get that backdoor pass because Apple aren't even a UK company, but the next best thing happened instead. As once again, socialism is a mental disease and it has AIDS. Therefore, to not face any kind of sanctions from the failed state, Apple are no longer going to provide advanced data protection within the UK, which means for all the Apple users out there, your messages may still be encrypted, but your nudes aren't. So if you've been taking snapshots of that little red rocket you've got, or you've been casually recording the events of you and that Gil from the bingo hall, Yvette Cooper wants to talk to you about it. And no doubt there'll be the arresting officer in case there has been a hate crime committed. Well, what a great day for the Soviet Kingdom! So much freedom! And before anyone points the finger at the Labour Party for systematically eroding our privacy, just remember this was only possible thanks to the Conservative Party, who laid the pathway in their online safety bill because hurty words on the internet exist, so we must arrest everyone. My god, it's like they're the exact same party, and all the toilet brains who vote for either one of them are literally voting for the exact same thing, and the UK is now on its death spiral. I mean, a big reason that this crap got through Parliament in the first place is because a second generation imported Somalian went and Londoned an MP to death, and instead of the discourse from the Conservative Party being, why did we willingly and on purpose import bucket loads of Islamic terrorism into this country, they instead blamed it on private messaging. Therefore, the British peasants are no longer able to talk to people without the government looking at the same time. Here's an idea. Stop importing shit from shit countries, and then deport the ones we've already got in the country, and then we won't need this level of surveillance because the British people aren't inclined on blowing each other up or stabbing stabbing. So with Apple getting inside the UK's cuck shed, we had the next erosion of our liberties. Now, as many of you are aware, I'm about one hate crime away from serving 25 days to life in Belmarsh prison. And one day I expect PC Dick Knuckles to turn up at my door telling me that I've been a very naughty boy for cracking jokes on the internet. But for now, I need not fear for my safety and liberty because they're actually going for the grannies first. Yeah, so it turns out if you have the audacity to criticise the Labour Party on the internet after a bunch of MPs and councillors were sending messages to each other hoping old people died, you will be visited by the police because even though they fully admitted that there was quite literally zero crimes committed, you're still a naughty boy and therefore for some reason requires a police response. What? So a lot of you dirty foreigners will be thinking, what the fuck is wrong with Daddy England, and why is it arresting and intimidating its own citizens for, let me check my notes, complaining Palestinian flags were lighting the streets instead of British flags, and then also a journalist writing a post on the intranet and then immediately deleting it off, and then a year later the police come after her? Well, it's called the non-crime hate incident, where if you say something on the internet that someone else doesn't like, and then that person complains to the policeman about it, even though you've committed absolutely no crimes whatsoever, then the police will pay you a little visit, tell you off for it, then against your record you'll have a non-crime hate incident that will appear on your background checks, potentially barring you from your job, and you'll never get a license for a shooting McBoomstick. Yeah, once again, this shite started under the Conservative Party, and now that Labour are in, they're just carrying it on, but even worse-lier. They're literally the exact same shade of shit. I mean, the level of hatred towards the indigenous population is so bad here that if your house is on fire and you call up the fireman and he rolls up in his big red fire truck and it turns out the fireman is white, then that is a hate crime of the highest order. Because according to an internal report, the UK Fire Service is racist, misogynistic, and full of homophobes. For fuck's sake, how do we end up like this? I don't give a fuck, mate. If the Ku Klux Klan turned up, my house is burning down. Just put the fucking fire out. My bet is this report was written by somebody whose job it is to find issues everywhere. You know, the DEI grift where you never complete your work because if you did, you'll be out of your job. Like when the police had a little bit of an inquiry and a report said they were systematically totally evil racist homophobes who also hate women, and when Lee Anderson asked them to provide some evidence of white men being prioritized over everybody else, it turns out they didn't have a single one to provide. What a surprise! The grift lives on. And just remember, the UK is currently trying to grow the army after years of declining troop numbers, while at the same time systematically telling you that they hate you for your skin colour, your heritage, your views, and most importantly, hate you for being indigenous. Fine then, let it all burn down, at least then it'll clear up the shit on the streets. Because as far as I see, our tax money ain't cleaning it. So okay, the downfall is real, and if anyone tells you we aren't dropping headfirst into the diarrhea bucket of a failed state, then they're a bunch of dirty gaslighters. Well, it turns out we could have some light at the end of the tunnel after all. Now, it probably doesn't take a genius to work out that I am somewhat favourable to the Reform Party. Especially Rupert Lowe, the man with balls bigger than Big Ben. And for any of you dirty foreigners out there who don't have a clue what I'm talking about, it's basically the party of MAGA Light, but for England, therefore mega. And it is headed up by Nigel Farage, the man who secured the United Kingdom a referendum on Brexit, and as soon as the people voted to leave, there was a massive international meltdown. Well, it turns out his party is doing pretty damn well in those polls right now, and a lot of people are thinking, the Conservatories are a bunch of pussies, and Labour are dirty gaslighting commies. Maybe it's time we try something completely different, because clearly whatever is happening right now isn't working. You know, like mass low-skilled immigration clogging up the social housing and diluting wages. Then there's the mass illegal immigration clogging up the hotels who are also on welfare. And then there's the immigrants who commit serious crimes and don't get deported because of things like chicken nuggets. Then there's the highest tax burden since the World War and the energy prices the highest in the world. Then there's infrastructure projects that require £100 million of taxpayers' money for bat tunnels. And of course, nonsense getting suspended sentences. You know what? I don't think I could fit it all on this massive list I have here. Basically, the Reform Party have 5 MPs in Parliament out of a total of 650, but they are scaring the utter shite out of everyone because they are topping every poll and the people are pissed at the status quo of British politics. Well, maybe they should have thought about that in the last election. So Keir Starmer, the man with a giant vagina, needed to get a game plan together to combat the Farage, and so took a flight to Scotland to address the Scottish Labour Party and rally them on how to fight against very scary Brexit man. Nigel Farage is a totally mean fascist. His party are all about hate crimes. Unlike us, who are tolerant of everyone unless you hold mildly conservative values, then you can go die in a fucking fire. His proposed policies of turning the boatmen around and pissing them off back to France and then deporting foreign criminals actually lowers our border security and makes people less safe somehow. And he hates working people because his policies are lowering taxes and not screwing companies over with communistic employment laws that will end up with higher unemployment. But the worst thing about him is he feeds off the failures of the free market to spread his bigotry. Oh, he's big mad right now. In fact, the whole speech was a re-raging meltdown of complete cope. I mean, he talks about the failures of the free market, while at the same time finding automotive companies thousands of pounds if they don't sell enough electric vehicles when the people want to buy petrol cars. Yeah, Yeah, that ain't a free market, you fucking dingus, so its failure is forced by government. Same with the collapsing steel industry through net zero and marginal energy pricing. It ain't the free market losing all these jobs now, is it? But away from the soy, little kid took his first trip to the Freedom Eagles after a month of being ignored, and so went to gobble the orange chode after calling Trump a totally hateful bigot before becoming the Prime Minister. You should have just shut your trap, mate. Where you can clearly see who wore the trousers in this relationship, which is suspiciously just like the Canadian handbags posture. Seriously, how do men sit like this? It is the most uncomfortable position I can think of other than getting pegged. Now, I watched most of the press conference and I can only conclude one thing. Starmer is a gaslighting commie and he is so full of cult ideology he is incapable of seeing the truth. What do I mean by that? Well, halfway through the press conference, it was asked what little Keir Starmer thought of J.D. Vance's speech and the erosion of freedoms within the failed state and across Europe. And as the Dalek stood there trying to be a tough man, he declared loudly and proudly that there has always been freedom of speech in the socialist kingdom and long may it continue. Really, Mr. Stalin? You get arrested and sentenced for gesturing at police, even arrested for posting a picture of the LGTB flag in a very unfortunate way, and you get arrested for silently praying in your head close to an abortion clinic. But oh lordy, if you nonce on children, you get suspended sentences, and if you're a Labour MP and then go beat somebody up, you only get a suspended sentence because of reasons that can only be described as judicial corruption. Get the fuck out of here. Alright then, let's head over to Germany because I'm about done with the failed state for this week. Well, looks like they had their little elections and the results were unsurprising. Yes, the moderate right party, the CDU, won with AFD in second. So of course the CDU immediately refused to work with the AFD because they're far right and promised even more immigrants with fuck all background checks, just as the local Syrian man gets Londoning bystanders because diversity is our greatest strength. Well, that's another attack to add to the list, so how's Sweden? Still blowing up. What about France? Yep, shooting outside of courthouses, but please, we need more immigrants from shithole countries, no matter the cost to the indigenous population. We don't need Russia to destabilize Europe, we're doing it ourselves. Well done everybody, take a round of applause. Although, I'm gonna go a little bit Alex Jones here with the gay frogs and all that. But I highly suspect that a lot of these cult members dripping with soy are actually products of Russian destabilization stretching all the way back to the Soviet Union era. Yes, Yuri Bezmenov, the man who told us back in the 80s that this shit was going to happen, and my god, it happened. We're entirely demoralized and our society is collapsing. And if you haven't seen the video where he explains it, go on YouTube, type in Yuri Bezmenov and watch it. It is eye-opening. Then there was the report all the way back in 2014 detailing how Russia were influenced the Green Lobby to oppose our own energy security, and for some reason everyone forgot Russia were doing this, then opposed their own energy security, and now we have net zero, and for the Soviet Kingdom the only reason our lights still on is because we're importing everybody else's energy. Well done, you dumbasses. Just keep closing it all down and refusing to drill for your own energy. But if you thought that was fucked, then boy, here is one for you. So let's head to South Africa where something even more retarded than Keir Starmer happened. A woman with no vagina got pregnant and is going to give birth. And before all of you totally evil bigots say, but wait a minute, isn't that just one of those Tyrannosaurus sexuals who pretends to be a man but is actually a woman this entire time? Well, in this case it gets even more weirdlier because how she got pregos was by cleaning her teeth with her boyfriend's toothbrush. That ended in a minty surprise. Then her ex-boyfriend showed up, stabbed her, and the sticky white glitter glue leaked from her stomach into her fallopian tubes and fertilized an egg. What the fuck? I mean, it's true what they say, life does find a way. I just didn't realise that this would be the way. But apart from that, I do hope she's alright now and that baby is all nice and healthy. But still, what the fuck? No doubt the ex-boyfriend is now roaming the streets of London with cancelled deportation orders. And talking of medical anomalies, I cannot believe I'm about to say this, even though I've been saying it for years, but those crap scenes that the government were trying to force us to take through straight up coercion and societal bullying turned out to be none other than crap vaccines vaccines hastily manufactured with minimal safety checks because a little study was conducted, and now that we're allowed to mildly talk about things about the cult reeing across the planet that we should be in COVID concentration camps, they were full of shit. Yes, the fact they never had full clinical trials and were only allowed on the market for emergency use while utilizing a new mass-produced mRNA technology does indeed have a medical consequence. Fucking a total so. This shit, where we weren't allowed to talk about the safety issues with the crap scene without getting banned and labeled a conspiracy theorist, set the trust in medical science back a century. I mean, my partner was pregos back in 2022 with my son, and the nurse tried to get her to take the crap scene, citing it will save her life if she got the Rona, and that there was plenty of medical studies detailing how it was totally safe for pregnant women, but then it turned out a little while later, there was zero evidence at all, and even Pfizer, to their credit, stated that it had not been tested on pregnant women. Yeah, I ain't gonna forget that one in a hurry, the assholes. And then came the next release of, well, we knew that anyway, the Epstein files. So the FBI, tasked by the Orange Man to release them, got to publishing exactly who is a dirty, dirty nonce and who was named in that little black book. Although they didn't, because it was all redacted and the information was already known by the general population. So it was complete dud. Looking forward to part 2 where it's just a block of black squares and we're still none the wiser on whether Tom Hanks has something to do with that island. Yeah, a plane crash ain't gonna be an excuse, mate. And I bet that football has a lot of stories to tell, you creep. But now it comes to the biggest news story of the week that I didn't have my bingo ticket of what the fuck is going on. The Zelenskyy Trump press tour that sent the world into the biggest meltdown that has ever melted down in the history of melting. Now, for anyone who's been living under a rock for the past couple of days, Zelenskyy went to America because Trump was keen on gearing up for a ceasefire to pave way towards lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine. Good idea. It could not come quick enough. There was, however, an Otto SpaghettiOs, also known as a massive shouting match in front of the entire world and Zelenskyy getting kicked out of the White House. So what did we learn here that a fence sitter would agree with? Well, first of all, I'm gonna be honest, both sides didn't really come out of this looking very good. There was too much shouting, too much pouting, and also too much talking over each other. But at the same time, both sides have some very, very valid points. Because as the Orange Man is looking towards a deal that will finally end the war, Vance pulled up the fact that the previous Visiting Angels administration tried the war footing, which got no one anywhere apart from a whole load of dead bodies on both sides. So it is time for diplomacy. Good. That is the right attitude to take. But Zelenskyy also had the point that there have been plenty of ceasefires in the past with the Minsk agreements, etc., and that Russia broke every one of them. Although, to be fair, the waters are a bit muddy there because each side accused the other of breaking it. So to Zelenskyy, what makes this peace agreement any different than the ones that have been done before? Well, I think that would be because everyone knows the Orange Man doesn't fuck around, because when other people have tried that, they have most certainly found out. And this time round, if the mineral deal is signed and sealed, there are going to be major US ties to Ukraine, so if Russia was to invade again, they would this time be going directly against US interests, which isn't just the Biden's money laundering business. Because let's be frank about it, and I ain't saying this as an opinion, it's just a statement of, well, basically how it is. There has got to be peace now because too many people have already died, but we all know Russia aren't going to give back the territory they've captured unless massive concessions are made by the West, which probably isn't going to happen. And Ukraine can't join NATO either, as that would push NATO right up against the Russian borders, and they ain't going to be happy about that at all. Therefore, economic interest is the best thing at prevention, because the last thing you want to do is fuck with the US. And I know some people are going to have a bit of a meltdown at me for that, but it isn't a case of what we want, it's a case of how it actually is. Big shout out to all my Patreon boys and guys. Every night I dream of us walking hand in hand on a beach while committing grotesque hate crimes. Love you all very much, Lee.
Subscribe button.
Is always right.